Everybody. So where we left off now is we can build nodes. And let me just jump over to the node class. What our node class says is that it can store generic data that we will define at the time we use it. Right now, so it can be an integer, it could be a string, whatever. That's the data that this thing stores. So it stores data. But the node also makes two references to other node objects. So that's why the node is what's called a self-referencing object. So in theory, if I was to draw this, it's a piece of data that holds the data and a connection to the next and a connection to the previous node. And in theory, if we string or chain these things together, that will be the basis of the linked list. So with that in place, we tested this last time by making three nodes, sticking data inside of them, and then connecting a couple of them. So if I was to draw this, it would look like this. N1, okay, N2, and N3. Okay. Now, what else do we know? Inside of N1, we put the letter A. Inside of N2, the letter B, and the letter C. But then comes along these lines. So we say N1.next equals N2. It's linked to N2. N2.previous equals N3. So it's not really a chain at this point. It's a weird look. But here's another question for you, and this is, I think, the more important question. What is N1.previous linked to right now? This one here. We don't have any code to say anything about what. We just said it's next, isn't it? So what is it linked to right now? Don't overthink it. Just say instinctively what you think it's linked to. Nothing. What's a code word to describe nothing?
Null.
Null, right. And I'm going to draw that with these slashes here. So this is linked to null, that's linked to null, and these two are linked to null, like that. That's what we have set up in memory right now, is this. Now this isn't perfect because in theory, this whole thing could actually have been drawn up here, right? Could have drawn it up here. And then it's not really in a line anymore. It doesn't look like a linked up chain at this point. It's more like, you know, like this is connected to this thing up here, like this. And so that's kind of weird. So that's why we've been using this to make nodes, but we're going to use the linked list class to make sure that the nodes link together properly and nicely. But hang on. I'm feeling lazy. I'm feeling like I don't want to write this line of code. I'd like to be able to do that up here by just doing this. So when I build the node, why don't you put the B inside it right when it's built? What's that called right there, what we're doing up in there? What are we modifying up here? What are we changing? Who knows what's going on up here? Anyone know? Well, when we left these empty, it's calling the node constructor. This is also looking for a constructor. Do we have that constructor? No. So if we write two constructors with different parameters, what's that called? Two methods, same name, different parameters. Who remembers? Overloading. Overloading. So let's do that. Let's go over to our node class. And let's now focus on constructors. Well, first of all, we didn't even write the default constructor. When I said they were going to be linked to null, we didn't do that. So let's do that. So right here in our constructor, let's say data equals null, next equals null, and previous equals null. So all three of these are nulls. Then under it, let's make another constructor. And the easiest, to be honest, let's just copy and paste. Copy this constructor, paste it, but add a parameter, tData. So in our second constructor, we're giving it data, which is what we did right here, right? We're saying, here's the data. Oh, look, I got rid of that error now. So here's the data I want you to put inside of this node right here. But what I can't do is just say, well, data equals data. That's confusing right there. Because it doesn't know which is which. That's like saying in math, x equals x. It doesn't make sense. So first thing is I could change that name. I could call it like data 1. But who remembers another way to do this? Any of you remember a different way? You've seen this before. A way to distinguish between the parameter and the global property. Right, you got it. Good girl. So in front of that one, you put this dot data. Okay? So now what happens is it's more clear what happens. This one is the parameter. Notice when I click on it, it only highlights these two. So that's the parameter. This one is different. If I click on that one, it highlights the one up top because they're different now. So the word this makes it explicit for the class. Like the class's data equals the same thing that this parameter is there. And so that worked out nicely. It was able to do that without that line of code. So actually, why don't I do that with this one as well? Put that there. There, saved a line. I know I could do it with the first one as well. I could put an A in there. I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rid of that line. So now I have that. N1 is a new node. Here's a question for you. What is the data inside of N1 now that I've taken out those lines? What's the data inside of N1? It's a bit of a trick question. Okay, so let's track what would happen here. So remember, this is the only place I talk about N1, and actually forget these two lines. Forget those, because those don't actually change the data. So here's the spot where I make N1, and when I make it, I call the constructor with no parameters, or the so-called default constructor. In the default constructor, if we go to node class, this isn't the default, this is the default, I set the data to null. Okay? So right now, sitting inside of N1 are three nulls. The data is a null, the next is a null, and the previous is a null. Sitting inside of N2, the data is the letter B, next and previous are nulls. But watch what I'm going to do with node N3. I'm going to do this and add another parameter. What do you think I meant by that? Okay, and actually, let's go ahead and delete these two lines. Let's just get them out of here. What do you think I meant by this? Let's draw them out here for a second. So N1 is a node, and I know by my constructor it sets all three of these to null. That's what N1 does. Then it makes N2. And it goes, oh, into N2, put the letter B. That's a null, that's a null. Now, I've said make an N3. And here's what I'm assuming I thought of, that I put a C here. But what do you think I meant by putting N1 there? What do you think I meant, Damien? I know, but I've passed it and a reference to N1 right here. So do you think I meant, this is what I meant. I want this to do this. And then this one can be a null. So I want the N1 to be the next node it's connected to. Okay, so let's write this constructor. So let's write a third constructor. And let's do that by just copying and pasting the one we just wrote, this one. Copy, paste. But now it has two parameters, tData and node next. And the way I'm going to change the code now is next, not next equals next, but this dot next equals next. Same thing I did in the other one. Okay? So it's just like that one. But now I'm saving a step here. So I'm saying, well, here's the data, and that's the next node after it. So it automatically did the linking for me. So if I go back to the test now, cleared up that error. Okay? So now here's what we have. We have three constructor options. We can build a blank node that's full of nulls. We can build a node that has data in it, but it's not connected to anything. Or we can build a node with data in it, but it's connected to the next one. There's one more constructor option. Here's what I'm going to do there. Let's make another node. Copy, paste, N4. I'm going to put a D in there, and I'm going to do this. What do you think N2 and N3 represent? I might be losing you guys a little bit here, so I'll give you a second to key that in, and then think it out. What do you think N2 and N3 represent? What happened to this thing? What's that? The node class? Sure. So here's those three constructors again. Okay, so the first one says null, null, null. The second one uses this dot data equals data, and then null, null. The third one uses this dot data and this dot next equals data and next, and then the third just says null. All right, so that's okay. And now let's make the fourth one by copying the third one, pasting, and we're going to add our third parameter, node previous, and it'll be this dot previous equals previous. Okay. So we actually have 4 constructor options. Oops. So this last one, see, this dot data equals data, this dot next equals next, this dot previous equals previous. And then different versions going up where we set things to null or not null. It's okay. Okay, so I'm going to draw this for you guys to help you understand what's going on there. But let's start by making sure you guys have all 4 constructors. Okay? All 4. This will help you because we're going to do a lot of referencing in this. So I want you to guys kind of get clear about what's happening with these links. Okay? So here's the code we have. So let me start by making N1. So it sees this line of code and it goes, okay, this programmer wants to make something called N1. It's a node, so I have a spot for the data and 2 references to next and previous. But because they're using the default constructor without any parameters, I just set all 3 things to null. That's how it makes N1. Then it gets to the next line and it goes, okay, now they want to make something called N2. But with this one, they've passed me the data. So I find my second constructor which says, oh, okay, put a B there, but make this a null and this a null. Okay, now it comes to the third line and it says, okay, now they want to make an N3. But with this one, they've chosen the third constructor, which has 2 parameters. It says put a C in there and then find the link to the next node and point it or reference it to N1. So it does that. So N3 is linked to N1, but because I only use 2 parameters, it says, oh, the previous one set it to null. Then finally it gets to the 4th line and it says, now they want to make something called N4. Okay, and they've picked the 3 parameter constructor, which means I put a D in there. The next is going to go to N2, so I got to go all the way over to N2. But the previous, oh, it goes to N3. So here's how you can see that I have 4 different ways I can make nodes. And in some of them, I can make them and connect them at the same time. Okay? But again, this isn't showing it in a line. It's just kind of crazy lines all over the place. But it'll allow us to link our nodes together. Okay? It's a lot to grasp right now at this point, but you guys kind of grasping what's going on? Absolutely. Let me just one sec. Okay, here's a little trick you can do. Whenever you have multiple constructors that kind of do the same thing, which is what constructors do, I want to focus on the last 2 constructors for a sec. Okay, so let me go in here and focus on these last 2. The very last constructor we wrote, this one, takes care of everything for us. It sets all 3 of the parameters, or all 3 of the properties, from the 3 parameters. The one above it is almost the same code except for the last line. So what I'm going to suggest is, in this constructor up here, we can actually shorten this down to one line. But I want you to see how I do it. It's something you haven't seen before. Okay? What do you think, before I write any more code, I mean by, well, when I say the word this, I'm talking about the class, right? What do I mean when I put 2 round brackets on something? What do 2 round brackets mean? A method, right? So do we have a method about the whole class? Do we have a method that uses the same name as the class? Well, isn't that what constructors are? Constructors are methods that have. So when I say this, it's calling another constructor. So I'm having one constructor call another, and I'm going to say, here's the data, here's the next node, and for the previous node, here's a null. By doing that, what happens is, it takes the data right here and passes it into this. This gets passed into this, and this gets passed into this. So then when it gets down to here, that's a null. So it says, make that a null. So it's the same idea. Okay? Keeping that in mind, let's go now up to constructor number 2. This one up here. I can basically do the same thing up here, but give this one a null. So now I'm saying, hey, set the data and set the other 2 to null. All right, tough question coming up. Ready? What would this one be? It'd be null, null, null. So now when we look at this, here's our 4 constructors. You didn't have to do that, but that's a neat little trick you can do with multiple constructors. Really, these ones just call this one. So they just send the code to that one down here, and then it just works that way. Think about that when you guys build your own classes. You may want to make multiple constructors. Always start with the hardest one. Think about JOption pane. You know when you use JOption pane, it has lots of little methods. Chances are each of those are just calling the final one in some form. Okay? So it's just a handy little trick there to get your code reduced in size. It's also good for debugging, because now you're always debugging a central location, and these are just sort of calling it. Okay, we'll stop there today. That's all.